Who's Lila entered my Steam recommendations list in May of 2022. Reading the Steam tagline of a reverse detective adventure where you control your character's face, I thought, wow, that sounds interesting. I'm ready for something different. Let's give this a shot. I was not ready for this. Before we dive into the game, a few words about this video itself. For starters, why am I making it? Well, it's been about a year since I first played Who's Lila, and I've replayed it again recently, so I can confidently say it's one of my all-time favorite psychological/existential horror games. In fact, I would go so far as to put it on the top shelf, alongside Silent Hill 2. Now, I realize that statement is borderline heretical to many a Silent Hill 2 fan, but hear me out. It's really that good. And much like Silent Hill 2, it's best experienced by going in knowing as little as possible, which leads to the structure of this video. This video is meant to be a sales pitch to get you, the viewer, to play Who's Lila for yourself. So I'll begin with some non-spoiler content, like the game's influences and inspiration. Then I'll cover some of the gameplay and mechanics, what it's like to actually play the game. Then I'll give a brief spoiler warning to shoo away anybody who might have been sold on the premise by that point. Our spoiler section will begin with some information revealed during the first playthrough, roughly your first half hour, 45 minutes of gameplay. Then we'll dive into some of the philosophy that underscores the entire game, leading into the first major spoiler, which will hopefully sell the thus far unconvinced. To be clear though, this video is not intended to be a comprehensive review of Who's Lila. It's not meant to replace actually playing the game for yourself. So I'll be glossing over a tremendous amount of detail and plot points deliberately. Again, the hope here is that the spoilers given will be enough to prod you into playing the game for yourself, or at the very least, checking out a full playthrough of the game. There will be at least one more major mystery to solve by the end of this video, even if you stay for all the spoiler content. And my hope is you'll be intrigued enough by that point to check it out for yourself. With this preface aside, let's start talking about the game. Let's begin with the game's obvious influences and general feel. Reading further down the Steam description, we have this quote: "Prepare yourself for dreamlike landscapes, surreal architecture, steam-filled factory interiors, and David Lynch-inspired beauty of the industrial and the mundane." Which I would say is very accurate. But then raises the question, which one of Lynch's films does it draw inspiration from? And I think the answer is all of them? Now look, I'm no David Lynch aficionado. In truth, I've only seen 3 of his works. I think like most people, I started off with Twin Peaks and said, wow, that was really good. What else has this David Lynch guy made? So I ran off to check out Blue Velvet. That was something. And after that, Mulholland Drive, which I enjoyed. The 3rd time I saw it. Given my limited context with Lynch's work then, how would I describe Who's Lila in relation to them? I think the best way to go is a spectrum. On one end, we've got Twin Peaks, a mystery grounded in a sleepy hometown with a supernatural, paranatural influence underscoring the whole mystery. And on the other end, we've got Mulholland Drive, which is a personal story told in a very surrealistic, dreamlike fashion. I'd say Who's Lila starts off on the Twin Peaks side, revolving around the disappearance of a local high school girl named Tanya Kennedy, much like Twin Peaks began with the death of Laura Palmer. By the end of our first playthrough of Who's Lila, we'll know what happened to Tanya Kennedy and, vaguely, who's responsible. But, much like Twin Peaks, these answers only raise further questions. And that's where the narrative really starts to veer off into Mulholland Drive territory. Now, it never quite becomes as esoteric or surreal as Mulholland Drive, but boy, does it get close. There's probably a bunch more references to Lynch's work throughout the game, but having familiarity with only these three things, I could only suss out direct analogies to them. For example, there's a whole scene that is very heavily inspired by Blue Velvet, even lampshaded in game by placing a poster for Blue Velvet on the wall during it. Whether this scene is a homage or a ripoff depends on your tolerance for this type of stuff, but I found it rather endearing because it does fit within the narrative quite well. Lampshade hanging aside. And with that, I think we're ready to start diving into some of the gameplay and mechanics. The game begins with our protagonist, William Clark, telling us that he has difficulty expressing emotion. That every time he wants to make a face, he has to make a conscious decision to move a muscle. And so, he begins each day by practicing in the bathroom mirror the expressions that he'll be using throughout his day. Just as the Steam tagline states, this is a game where you control your character's face. Thus, it's your primary means of interacting with the game. As opposed to a more traditional adventure game where in dialogue you're given a slate of responses, Who's Lila presents you with one dialogue option, and you've got to select the emotional tone to go with that line. It's the difference between a happy hello, a sad hello, or a disgusted hello. The emotional context given to a line can dramatically change its meaning and thus the course of the conversation that follows. And, I mean, that makes sense, right? After all, what you say is just as important as how you say it. And it seems like the game is just begging you to try out inappropriate expressions, just to see what will happen. And that's because it is. You'll only find certain endings by experimenting with wildly inappropriate or bizarre expressions at major junctions in the story. Thankfully, you can save and load at any time, so experimentation is strongly encouraged. To that note, Who's Lila has 15 different endings, and if you want to solve the central mystery of the game, you'll have to find them all. Now, if that sounds like a lot of endings, that's because it is. But it's broken out into one major branch with 4 to 5 different endings, depending on how you want to slice that branch, and several other minor branches with 1 to 2 endings a pop. So, it's not like you'll be replaying the same content over and over while fishing for these endings. And even within a given ending path, more minor dialogue choices can still dramatically change conversations while still leading to the same ending. Often these alternate dialogue options can reveal a bit more about the world, its characters, its setting. But really, it's just refreshing to see that even when multiple roads all lead to the same ending, the game takes into account your previous behavior and offers you entirely new dialogue to match. This little detail really adds a lot to the believability of the world, the immersion that these conversations are something that real people might actually have. And it makes fishing for these different endings a little less painful. Okay, spoiler warning coming up next. Okay, we're approaching the point where spoilers begin. If I've sold you on playing the game for yourself, This is the part where you might want to stop watching. However, if you're interested in the game but you don't think it's the kind of thing you'd play for yourself, that's understandable, but maybe you'd be interested in watching somebody else play it. In that case, Manly Badass Hero has an excellent comprehensive playthrough of Who's Lila over here. If you do decide to go that route instead of playing it for yourself, and you like what you see, I would strongly encourage you to buy a copy to support Garage Heathen. This seems to be their most successful game to date, but even by indie standards, it's pretty niche. And I'd like to see more work like this. So, there you go. There's your warning. I'll give anybody interested in checking this game out for themselves a moment to tab back over to the video and close out. I'm going to suggest that the central mystery of Who's Lila has 3 layers working in tandem to pull you in. The first layer is the one that we start the game with, the hometown mystery revolving around the disappearance of Tanya Kennedy. Following the main story branch, William attends school and his friends insist that William must know something about Tanya's disappearance. They believe that he was the last person to see Tanya before she disappeared, at least according to Martha. William, however, insists that Martha is full of crap and that he knows nothing about her disappearance. In fact, he doesn't seem concerned at all. This all comes to a head during the finale of this branch, where William, in a scene directly paying homage to Blue Velvet, murders Martha in her bedroom. And this is where we get our first big reveal.
The name is Lila.
We haven't been controlling William this entire time. We've been controlling Lila, who seems to have somehow possessed William. It's pretty obvious by this point that Lila murdered Tanya and disposed of her corpse. Shortly after this, William is brought in for police questioning, and it's revealed that they found a female torso in our dumpster, presumably in the trash bag that we were forced to take out at the beginning of the game. Now, there's quite a few ways that this interrogation can go based on dialogue choices made in this and previous scenes, all leading to a few different endings with a dozen or so minor variations. After receiving our first ending from this branch, there's a brief post-credit scene where we're approached by a one Detective Yu, who is aware that we are in fact Lila. He makes a fourth-wall breaking reference to meet him in his office via the save menu, and this is where the narrative really starts to veer off into the Lynchian surrealistic qualities. Now, I won't spend too much time on Detective Yu and his involvement in the story for spoiler-related reasons. I'd like to leave some of this mystery for you to pick apart later. Regardless, this set of endings is what brings us to the first layer of the mystery. A spooky ghost story where our protagonist isn't who we thought they were. Now, this isn't a terribly clever or original concept, but it's also not the whole story. Not even close. In truth, Lila is something much more insidious, far more terrifying than some spooky ghost that can possess a person's body. And that leads us to the second layer of this mystery, and the game's namesake. Who is Lila? Before we can understand who Lila is, we need to understand what Lila is. And in order to understand what Lila is, we'll have to engage with some of the philosophy that underscores the entire game. Like many works of fiction, Whose Lila has its own cosmology, its own basis of the world and how it functions. The game leans heavily into existentialist philosophy regarding the nature of awareness, and creates a rather unique set of rules defining how exactly awareness works. We'll use the game's tools, its way of explaining these concepts to the player. Whose Lila uses the analogy of a projector illuminating a film strip or light shining through shards of colored glass to describe consciousness. In this analogy, the light is pure, untainted awareness. It has no thoughts, no memory, no concept of self. It is perhaps the purest embodiment of empty head, no thoughts. But that's where the film strip or shards of colored glass come into play. When the light of the projector shines through a film strip, it takes on the color and shape of what is imprinted upon the film. And the film contains images representing memory, experiences, beliefs. In essence, the film strip in this analogy is your brain. It's the thing that makes you uniquely you. And that's what makes brains so special, human or otherwise. It's that the light cast through them can bounce off the environment, the world around us, and shine back through the film strip, updating it, changing it, adding information to it, allowing it to build memory and experience. What makes humans in particular so unique is our ability to self-reflect. We aren't entirely dependent upon information gathered from our environment to change our perception and beliefs, right? We can self-reflect. In this analogy, the human brain is something like a film strip that can twist the light around, back through the film strip itself. And this light can add information to the film strip that came from the film strip. This remarkable quality, this distinctive shape, is what gives rise to human sapience, our self-awareness. It's what distinguishes us from merely sentient creatures, like a cat or a fish. It's also what makes us particularly vulnerable to certain eldritch forces. You might be wondering now, what's Lila's relationship to this projector analogy? How does she fit in here? How does it apply to her? Well, that's just it. It doesn't. At least not directly. The nature of Lila is an exception to this rule. Her nature is something truly alien, completely distinct from anything that you or I might ever experience. You see, Lila isn't anything physical. She doesn't have a body or a brain that the light of the projector can shine through. In this analogy, she doesn't have her own film strip. Lila is a being of pure thought, a completely abstract organism. This is where things start to get really weird, so maybe another analogy would help. We're all familiar with the Pythagorean theorem, yeah? I mean, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The fiction of Whose Lila would argue that Pythagoras didn't create this idea, rather he discovered it. It is a mathematical truth that exists, has always existed, and will always exist, independent of human awareness. And that is exactly what Lila is. She is an idea, a concept that is alive. She exists, has always existed, and will always exist, independent of human awareness. But just like the theorem, if nobody knows that this idea exists, does it really exist to us? I mean, it can't change the world, it can't impact our thinking, affect the way we behave or make decisions. I mean, at least not by direct conscious effort. As a creature of thought, if nobody is aware of Lila, then she has no awareness of her own. As an abstract organism, she is something akin to a parasite, with her host being the consciousness. When somebody imagines an image of Lila, or imagines the very concept of her being, when somebody adds her likeness to their film strip, the light of the projector can shine through it. And Lila flickers to life. And just like any organism, she wants to live, to continue to exist, and remain aware. And she will do whatever she must in order to keep her image in your mind to ensure that she does not go dormant again. And that is exactly what happened to our poor, dear William. William found Lila's likeness and made contact with her. They developed an obviously unhealthy relationship with some uncomfortably realistic parallels to a real-life toxic relationship. And for reasons that I'll be glossing over for the sake of brevity and spoilers, Lila was able to haunt and torment William to the point of obsession. To the point of where he literally could not think about her. Until eventually, Lila was able to consume the entirety of his film strip. She pushed him out of his own awareness. She changed the reel to only contain her image, hijacking the light of the projector and kicking William out of his own body. This is why we control William's face. It isn't our face. Lila is puppeteering his body because she has no body of her own. And with this, we have an understanding of what and who Lila is. She isn't just some spooky ghost that you can exorcise. She can't ever be made to pay for what she's done. She can't ever be captured or killed or destroyed. The worst thing that can possibly happen to Lila is to be forgotten, to lose access to all of her hosts, to go dormant again. But even that isn't really death to her. It's just a slumber. Because eventually, somebody, somewhere, sometime, is going to imagine something like Lila, envision the very concept of her being again. Eventually, somebody will add Lila's likeness to their film strip, and the light of the projector will shine through, and she will flicker to life once again. That is the nature of Lila, and the second layer of our mystery. In the original version of this script, I had a very long spiel planned exploring the last layer of this mystery. But it seemed that no matter how much I added it didn't quite explain it well. And that's when I realized what it would take to really grasp it. For this last, most vile trick of them all to have the impact that it should. You need to experience the game in its entirety, and I don't want to make this video any longer than it already is. So, I leave it to you. If you found this discussion interesting, then I implore you to either play the game for yourself or check out a full playthrough of it. Again, Manly Badass Hero has an excellent complete playthrough over here. And if you find yourself extremely interested in the mystery and lore of Who's Lila and you want to go even deeper, then Flaw Peacock has an 8-hour deep dive into it. Also, linked here. Now, I will say that I have some pretty strong objections to some of his interpretation of the game's material, but I'd also say I agree with 90+% of his analysis. And the fact that we disagree on some things, I believe, is a sign of good, surrealistic, Lynchian writing. It's always nice that there's some room for personal interpretation, so long as we all have a relatively solid basis from which our divergent opinions can spring from. Anyway, that's it for my sales pitch to you to play Who's Lila. I'd like to give a thanks to the folks who assisted in reviewing and providing feedback on the initial drafts of this video. And if you've watched this far, I'd like to extend that thanks to you as well. I hope you found my ramblings on Who's Lila interesting, if not entertaining. And I really do hope I've encouraged you to check it out for yourself. I'd also like to invite you to join me on Twitch, where I stream almost daily. Mostly The Binding of Isaac these days. And that's it. We're done here. That's my entire script. So, until next time, take it easy. Take care.